Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. Olawale Fakonda, a leading expert in justice sector reforms, is still with us in the studio. Now, just before we went on break, you're just touching quickly on the prisons. With about 47,817 inmates, as the figure I got now, currently awaiting trial in Nigerian prisons, out of a total number of about 69,200 detainees. And we've seen a number of chief justices in different states visiting, the prisons, exercising the prerogative of mercy. Do you think this is the way to handle it?
Well, it's one of the ways. Again, look at the sums. 68,000 total population in our 224 prisons. 47,000 remand persons. 1,600 persons on death row. So do the sums. For a population of what, 150 million, it shows that we have less than 20,000 convicted persons. So it's either that we're a low crime country and we have no problems, or that our criminal justice system is fundamentally flawed. Now, the problem is really not, for me, those numbers, is how we treat those who are in prisons. The average waiting time for those awaiting trial persons that you cited is anything between 5 to 10 years. In fact, I've had cases of persons who have been awaiting trial for 16 years, And then look at the state-specific prisons. In Port Harcourt prisons, I visited Port Harcourt prisons recently. The prison has a capacity of 800 beds. When I visited, they had a population of 3,800. So, it's times what? Times 3. If you look at Ikoyi prisons in Lagos, has a capacity of 800, I think. They are now over 2,600. If you look at the prison in Kano Central Prison, has a bed space of 600. There are now more than 2,600 persons in that prison.
So there are two things you're deducing from this quickly. You're deducing that, first of all, the population of plus awaiting inmates trial plus convicted people is quite small in relation to the number of people that you have in relation to our population as a country.
Yes. And
then you now look at the people who are there, and the population of the actual convict is, just a fraction of the number of people who are supposed to be in prison.
There are many people who are in prison who are not supposed to be in prison, and there are many who are out of prison that are supposed to be in prison. In any case, we have said, that the keeping thousands of persons in prison without trial is not just a law, human rights or justice issue. It's now an issue of national security. As you have seen of late, there have been a number of jailbreaks. Now, imagine those 3,000 angry inmates in Port Harcourt prison getting out in Port Harcourt. What will be the state of security of that state be like?
Ordinary Nigerians have heard these figures. This most likely will not be the first time that they've heard it. I mean, people have shown concern, but what more can they do? Government needs to show more than concern. Every administration, and I've been part of a number of discussions around that. Every administration comes in and they look at the place and they say it's a very bad situation. But it stops there. Look, for me, governance is not a popularity contest. We need to take hard decisions. Anyone who has not been, who we are not able to try for upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years should be released unconditionally. And I know that is politically incorrect. People will say, given all the security concerns, you want to release criminals, as they call them in society. But, we are simply just warehousing them. We are simply warehousing them. So somebody needs to take that very hard decision that if we are not able to prosecute, if we are not able to process these persons across, through the courts, up until conviction and prosecution, then, what are the options available to us? We have to simply just release them. What about plea bargaining?
That would be an option, but if you look at the percentage, now majority of these numbers that are in the statistics that you have cited are persons who have been accused of serious offenses, armed robbery and the like. You know, regrettably, the police seems to be, that is the strategy for keeping persons in prison. So having a conversation about plea bargaining at all, you know, sometimes it's a futile exercise. But again, you know, one of the good things about the Adjournment of Criminal Justice Act is that it provides for that. But unfortunately, we have not been able to test it, to use it. The other important intervention, which I think should be made with respect to the prisons, is that oftentimes we concentrate on the conditions of the prisoners themselves. Prison officers suffer some of the horrendous conditions of public service. So even if you are looking at rehabilitation, if you are saying that, okay, you know, we've kept these people for long, let us begin to find how they are going to be useful citizens coming out. The prison officers that are supposed to provide that level of, you know, intervention are themselves struggling. If you go to Ikoyi prisons, the accommodation of those prison officers is a scandal. It's a disgrace, you know.
So, well, some people might also say that perhaps you're approaching your view in terms of awaiting trial inmates will come from the perspective of your position as a human rights lawyer and also perhaps as the vice chair on the National Committee Against Torture. Is this National Committee, is it an advocacy group or is it a group that actually inspects and sees to the fact that, you know, there should be no torture in Nigeria?
It's a government group. You know, the federal government signed the Convention Against Torture. And one of the follow-on from that is to set up what they call a national monitoring or national implementing mechanism. So for Nigeria, the implementing mechanism is the National Committee for the Prevention of Torture. Now, what we do, apart from monitoring, you know, responding to concerns of torture broadly, is to visit prisons. We think that keeping thousands of persons locked up in some small place itself constitutes an act of torture. So yes, we go around, we visit, and I don't think there is any other, responding to you directly, there is any other way of looking at it. You know.
I was asking in terms of can people complain to you? Can any action be taken?
Oh yes, yes.
Or is it just, you know, do you just keep advocating that torture must stop, maybe as a means of getting confession from suspects? Or,
yes, we keep saying torture must stop, and not only are we saying torture should stop, we are also now working on a legal framework. We are now in the process of drafting, of proposing an anti-torture legislation. But there's not much we can do also, you know. We can do the advocacy, we can do the laws, but ultimately we have to come to that stage where, you know, federal and state government simply recognizes that, you know, it is treating inmates properly, responding to this congestion in prisons, you know, looking at criminal justice system as a whole is crucial. It's crucial to the economic growth of any state.
I'm going to take you up quickly on this one. You recently wrote an article, Death for Kidnappers, Ambode Got It Wrong. You frown at the death penalty. Why do you do so? Especially, I mean, isn't it allowed even in cases where the convict of the suspect is
For me, there is no constitutional debate about the legality or constitutionality of death penalty. You know, in the case of Peter Neme versus State, the Supreme Court made it clear that death penalty is constitutional. Now, what I have issues with is, you know, the false sense of security that the enactment of death penalty seems to give to Nigerians. We have just 1,600, a little bit more than 1,600 death row inmates in Nigeria. So with all what is happening in the Northeast, with all the Fulani herdsmen issue, with all the kidnapping that is happening around the country, add that to armed robbery, you have 1,600 inmates. And people assume that, you know, when they talk about death penalty, that you kill them on the spot.
Well, that's the program today. Your tweets and mails are welcome to @CityTV Hardcopy and hardcopy @channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun. See you next week.